when you think about people with resilience in the developing world, for example, you think, oh, well, they're probably not dealing with it with the same way that someone here is, and that they might not be struggling with the dark side of it as much as you guys were mentioning before.
This is all I've ever known. Is that even
possible for me?
I don't want to miss anything.
I don't need that.
I don't want to acknowledge my pain.
I don't want to get poked with needles.
I don't want that.
There's nothing wrong.
I'm fine.
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 Welcome back to I'm Fine, a podcast segment where we deep dive into what those two words really mean, especially when it comes to living with hemophilia. Today we're exploring a rarely discussed aspect, the dark side of resilience. Sounds exciting. I can take it. I can take it. I can take it. That's a phrase that many of us with hemophilia have grown up saying. I can take it. It's the armor we wear. I can take it. Resilience. It's a badge of honor, right? But let's pause and think about it. Is it always a good thing? Growing up resilient because of hemophilia can sometimes lead to a dangerous misbelief. We start to think that pain, isolation, and stigma are normal or okay. But here's the thing. Just because we can endure does not mean we should. Imagine constantly battling through some level of pain or challenge. It's exhausting, isn't it? The physical and mental toll, it's real. We need to ask ourselves, could there be a path that makes life just a little bit easier? Is there a space where resilience can be balanced? I know for me, I've experienced many of these things in my life from a very young age, knowing that pain in my ankle, pain in my body was simply going to be there. And if I wanted to participate in life, I was going to need to get used to saying, I'm fine. Now as an adult, I have a different perspective and I can deconstruct this idea, but I'm also left to wonder how many other patients around the world are experiencing this I'm fine mindset in quite the same way. For example, is it the same for a person with hemophilia who lives in Kenya as it is for me, where medication and access to services are not nearly what they are here? Are those patients experiencing the same sorts of challenges with this resilient mindset? Or is it just absolutely necessary given their circumstances? To help us dive into this part of the dark side of resilience, I am joined by my colleague and friend, Rob Bradford, who is just back from a content capture trip around the world where he had a chance to meet with community members and speak to them, amongst other things, about this very topic. Mr. Rob Bradford, thank you for joining me. How do you see the role of resilience play out on these trips like the one that you've just been on? What does resilience look like when you're with community around the world?
I've been lucky enough to travel around the world with Believe to probably 25 or so countries at this point, and I'd say resilience is what I primarily see everywhere. It manifests itself in different forms. Everybody's got a different story, and people in certain countries are dealing with different things, but I see it everywhere. I see people just trying to not just survive with hemophilia, but thrive with it. No one wants to just be getting by. Everyone wants to be living a better life. And I'm grateful to say that I've seen that everywhere, and it's been pretty consistent.
What about for you personally, Rob? When it comes to resilience, what do you think about? How does the role of resilience play out in your life?
I mean, I'd like to think I'm pretty resilient. Thankfully, I think it comes to me pretty naturally, especially when I'm doing something that I love. I love the work I get to do here at Believe. I love the stories we get to tell. I love the advocacy that we get to do here. And so I think the resilience is just kind of a byproduct of pursuing something you love. And it comes out all the time. I mean, we were just in Egypt and, given the tensions with the war and everything going on there, it was a nonstop obstacle party, government trying to get in our way at every possible point, in theory for our safety and everything. But we pushed through. Our crew was great. We put on our patient hats and, we trucked on. it's hard to compare with some of the resilient stories that we were getting to share. But, that was just one of the things. We didn't sit on our laurels and complain about it. We just kind of got on with the job and made it happen.
Rob, last question on this for now. Again, based on the experiences that you've had, not just this year, but for the past decade, traveling around the world, meeting community members in all sorts of circumstances. In your mind, what's the greatest misconception as it relates to resilience in the hemophilia community?
Possibly that I think that we might be viewing things differently. I think sometimes when you think about people with resilience in the developing world, for example, you think, oh, well, they're probably not dealing with it with the same way that someone here is, and that they might not be struggling with the dark side of it as much as you guys were mentioning before. But I think, for example, I met this guy in Senegal who was awesome. He's a young kid. He lives in a village that's really, really remote. It's about 200 people. And he just has a farm with his dad. And they're struggling with a lot of stuff like water access and some just basic needs to run this farm. And the community there is just living on very, very, very low means. And this kid is, not only has to, if he's getting a bleed, for example, has to ride on a horse to the nearest hospital to get treatment, but he has got himself into school for economy, specifically for agriculture and economy, and has got all these business plans to really capitalize on his dad's farm. And, they've gone into business together, and he's trying to make it as big as he can and bring more income into his village so that they can get better water access and all these different things. And, you talk about resilience, like that guy was super inspiring. And I think, it's easy to kind of think, oh, well, yeah, he's got like a really positive attitude and positive mindset. I'm sure he doesn't want to be dealing with any of these things. I'm sure that guy would love to not have any of those problems at all. And so I'm sure he feels, both sides of that, just as everybody else does.
Rob, thank you so much for joining us. Rob Bradford, COO of Believe Limited, an international production maestro. Thank you, sir. Hemophilia severity is determined by factor activity levels, a measurement of how much factor you have in your blood at time of diagnosis. The more factor you have in your body over time, the better your bleed protection is, which is why many people with hemophilia choose to treat prophylactically. Your doctor can perform measurements to evaluate the factor activity levels in your blood. Learn more about the importance of factor activity levels by talking to your doctor and visiting levelsmatter.com. Sanofi aims to raise the bar for patients living with hemophilia. Reimagine what's possible by visiting rareblood.disorders.com to hear more about Sanofi's dedication to the bleeding disorders community. Remember, resilience is not just about how much can you bear. It's about knowing when to seek help. It's about knowing when to slow down, to take a rest. It's about knowing when to say, this is too much. And it's about knowing when to look for a better way forward. So to all my fellow blood brothers and blood sisters out there around the world battling hemophilia with incredible strength, let's remember, resilience is a tool, not a mandate. It is okay to lower your shield sometimes and say, I need a different approach. Thanks for joining me on today's episode. And whether you're learning to balance your resilience or seeking new ways to manage your journey, remember you are not alone. Subscribe to the Bloodstream podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and we'll be back with more insights and conversations on the next episode. Take care of yourself and keep redefining what it means to say I'm fine.